Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. I appreciate it very, very much. And if you're joining us online, thank you for joining us online. I have, I think the last time that I did it, about a month ago, I was very pleased to discover that somebody had logged in from India. I don't know how he found our stream, but he logged in from India and said hello on the live stream, and I thought that was pretty terrific. How our little church service here, our Sabbath school, really literally goes around the world. Well, a big welcome again, and just for those folks that might not know, this is the Auburn City Seventh-day Adventist Church, and this is our Sabbath school time. This is the time that we have to study the Bible and to be together in this endeavor. I'm going to try to have some time today for your responses. I'm going to try and learn from you. And hopefully, maybe you can learn something from me. I don't know, but we can all learn from the Bible together. And that's what we're going to do this morning. It's January 23, and it is the perfect Seattle weather this morning. You get the onshore flow in the morning. It comes in. It's cloudy, so it doesn't warm up to 90 or 100 degrees. It gets into like the mid-70s by the afternoon. My father I'll hang on to it for a while. That'd be okay. All right. There. Oh, yeah, I can really hear myself. Okay. So what I want to do, I want to start in the book of Malachi. And I know it's funny. It was interesting to me as I went through the lesson that this verse in Malachi is not represented, and I would have thought that for sure that at some point in time this verse would have been represented. We're going to look at Malachi chapter 3 and verse 2 and 3. So if you would turn in your Bibles there, please, to Malachi 3 verses 2 and 3. And my Bible reads, "But who can endure the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer to the Lord an offering in righteousness." Now, if you read the lesson, you read this story, because and I never like to just come up and repeat verbatim things that are in the lesson. I'm going to hope that you've read the lesson and you found it interesting, and maybe found some things on your own that you have looked up, that it sort of impelled you to maybe strike out on your own a little bit. So I never like to come here with things that are just verbatim in the lesson. But this is a fairly famous story, and it comes to us from Amy Carmichael. Amy Carmichael was an Irish woman who traveled to India and lived her entire life in India. And according to Wikipedia, she was there 55 years without a furlough. And so she lived her whole life, her whole adult life was in India. And she started orphanages there, she started missions there, and she was a prolific author. She wrote 35 books, and this particular story comes from one of her books. She was in the market with some of her children. And in the market, there was a man there who was heating silver in a little bowl, and he would put things in the silver as it was melting, and so the liquid the metal had turned to liquid, and he would look at it, and then he would manipulate it, and if he wasn't satisfied, he would continue to do things to purify that silver. And Amy asked him, "Well, how do you know when the silver is pure?" And the man said, "When I can see my face in it." And in this story, in this verse in Malachi, we have the refiner, that God is comparing himself to the refiner, and we can be purified when he can see his face in the silver. It's a wonderful illustration, and it goes right into the essence of this lesson, is that the trials and the tribulations, the difficult things in our life, is preparing us for the moment that when someone looks at us, they see Jesus. So, I have never refined silver or gold, but I have melted lead, which is not nearly the very pure things that silver and gold are. But in melting lead, you start with things that are of a certain form. okay? So maybe there's a lead figurine, something that's actually made out of lead. And you melt that down, and then you put it in a mold, and when it's in that mold, it takes the shape of the mold. So it starts out as one shape, it is melted down, and then it is put so that it creates a different shape. We have a process of being melted down and being put into the mold of Christ. And that's what we're going to talk about today, what it means to be melted down and put into the mold of Christ. Let's look at 2 Corinthians. This is, I think, the memory verse for today, 2 Corinthians 3, verse 17 and 18. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 and 18. And listen for this. There's something wonderful happening in these verses. And I'm gonna give you a little hint right now to listen for the dichotomy. Listen for the opposite. There's an opposing thing happening here. Paul is describing something, and in that description, he says it's this way, and then he also says, and it's that way. There's two things. I want to see if you can find them. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 and 18. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. Okay? So, can you hear the dichotomy? Can you hear the thing that Paul says it's this way, and then he turns around the next moment and he says it's that way? Can you hear it? There's something going on. There's something going on with the Spirit. The Spirit is doing two things. Two things. I'm going to give you a moment to keep looking at that verse. What is the Spirit doing? What do you think? It's transforming us, yes. So what's the implication of that transformation, Beth? It's what's the first thing that's happening? What's that? Okay, all right. Yes, we are looking with an unveiled face. Now, previously in the chapter, when he's talking about that veil, he's talking about the people that are under the law, the people that were looking at the Old Testament and how they were viewing things. But because it was looked through a veil, all the temple services, all of those things that were happening, all of those things pointed to the real thing, which is Jesus. Okay? I think we're very familiar with that sort of a picture. But now that Jesus has come, we're not looking with a veiled face. Now we're looking at it with an unveiled face. But the Spirit is doing something, and Beth is on the right track here. But there's two things that are happening. It's kind of one way, and yet it's kind of the other way as well. What's the Spirit doing? In verse 17, what is the Spirit doing? setting us free. Yes, setting us free. Wonderful. So we were this old thing. We were this old lead figurine. And perhaps we had, I don't know, maybe it was something ugly. I can't even imagine it was an ugly old, whatever it was an ugly old figurine. And the Spirit has set us free. We're no longer an ugly old figurine anymore, an ugly old lead figurine. We've been melted. Now we can be anything that we want. If we took that and we poured it out on the floor, it would just be a little lake of lead there that would slowly cool off and just become this little sheen. But that's not what's happening. We're set free in order for what in verse 18? What's that? A transformation. What sort of a transformation? Into what? Into the likeness of who? Of Jesus, yes. Into the likeness of Jesus. So at the one time, the Spirit is freeing you. You can be anything. You don't have to be this old, ugly person. And yet, at the same time, it is freeing you in order to transform you into the very likeness of Christ. So it's wonderful. I read that and I just blew my mind that, okay, at the same time, you're getting freedom and you're being made into a very exact replica. The dichotomy. You're free in order to be transformed. Let's get going. Let's talk about the heat. Okay? Let's talk about the heat. What is the heat? We're talking about the Spirit is transforming us, setting us free, but something is making that happen. Let's go to Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12. Now, in the lesson wanted us to read the first 10 verses. Daniel 12, 1 through 10. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to read the first couple of verses, and then I'm going to jump down and read the last part just for time. Okay, here we go. Daniel 12, starting with verse 1. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars, forever and ever. I'm going to jump down now to about verse 7. I'm just going to go to the question in verse 6. Here we go. How long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Although I heard, I did not understand. I know I wouldn't have understood. Then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Okay. What is happening? What's being described here? What's going on? The man in linen is talking to Daniel, but before that is these words. Michael is standing up. What is happening? Now, in a general sense, and just from the verse, what does it say that's happening? What's happening? The end of days is coming, okay? Do we have another word for that? What's that? Time of the end? Time of trouble. Thank you. So the time of trouble. It says there's a time of trouble is coming. So we're going to talk about trouble. Well, I need to probably write that really big. Time of trouble. Trials. What makes things a trial? What makes it the time of trouble? What is it? What is a trial? It took me 20 minutes to drive here this morning. Was that a trouble? Was that a trial? Was it a trial? Traffic? What is a trial? We're talking in this lesson that trials refine us, purify us for presentation to God, and mold us into the image of Christ. So, what is a trial? What is it? A test. Okay, we're going to put that up on the board. Okay, so a trial is a test. Good? All right. Do we have another thought? verse 17 and 18, and I want you to listen for what it means, what suffering means, okay? What does suffering mean? Here we go, Hebrews 2, verse 17 and 18. Talking about Jesus here. Therefore, in all things, he had to be made like his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. When Jesus, according to this verse, when Jesus suffered, what was happening? What was happening? When Jesus suffered, he was... What's that? Okay, yes, that is the reason why he can't be our high priest unless he immersed himself in our experience. So he could empathize with us. Yes.
And that is the part of our trials.
Okay, so he empathized with the people in order to help us in our trials. But in the next verse, when it says that he suffered, what does it say that the suffering is?
Propitiation.
But in the next verse, it says Jesus, when he was suffering, he was...
To aid, he is able to aid.
He's able to aid, but in the verse it says that he suffered, that is what? What is suffering according to verse 18?
Being tempted.
Being tempted, yes. When Jesus was tempted, he was suffering, according to the author of Hebrews. That puts a completely different light on the idea of trials and in an idea of suffering. Now, the picture that we have is, oh, look at that. It's supposed to be a dry erase marker, and yet I'm leaving half of the stuff behind. Oh, dear. What we have is a picture where we have a temptation. Temptation. And we can make a choice. We can choose God's way. And if we choose God's way, it builds character. Builds character. Or we can choose my way and start the whole process over again because we haven't grown. And the temptation is a test, is a trial. Every time that we have a choice of choosing to do something God's way or choosing my own way is a trial. Every one, every single one, every day, constantly. I can't remember where it came from here, but the idea that trials are constant. You have temptation, you have a choice to make. You can choose God's way and build your character. You can choose my way and just never grow. And of course, what happens is your character has built a little bit because you've moved past this temptation. And then what the next thing that happens is there's a new temptation and a new choice to make. And a new test. And failing it brings you back to that again. And succeeding in it brings you back to building character again. It's a constant daily test. Not just daily, it's a moment by moment test of what you're going to do if you're going to choose God's way or if you're going to choose your own way. And to choose God's way is to grow into the mold of Jesus Christ. Okay? So trials, there will be a time when there will be great stress, there will be great pain. There might be times like that. But every decision for God, every one is a trial. Every one is a test. Let's keep going. Now, back to Daniel. The second part of that verse, because we talk about, you can go on YouTube, you can listen to the fellows talk about the Sunday laws and the papal strike and the New World Church Order, whatever it's called. It's a constant. Yeah, that's right. There is a place for having that sort of knowledge, but it is interesting in this verse in Daniel. It talks about when is the time of the end. When is this all going to be over? And it's curious, the words that get used. We're going to go back there. We're going to look at how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? That's in verse 6. And then you go down a little bit. He says, when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all of these things will be. Okay, so God is looking for the power of the holy people to be completely shattered. What does that mean to you? What does it mean for the power of the holy people to be completely shattered? Does that mean that God's only going to come after all of the righteous people are in jail? After all the righteous people are dead? After all the righteous people have, standing up in front of a firing squad or something? What does it mean to you that God will come only when the power of the holy... I'm going to have to read it again. The power of the holy people has been completely shattered. Any thoughts? What does that mean? The power of the holy people has been completely shattered. Yes. No, I'm going to come back to you so you have the microphone. You did really good last time. So again.
It is the disappointment because Daniel 12 refers to the last days in the opening book, or the seal of the book and opening the book, which is the sweet and bitter in the stomach. So what's happening here, like Jesus, when he died, all his disciples are shattered. So they are disappointed. There was the disappointment. But that disappointment became the very foundation or the cornerstone of the faith.
That's very good. I'm gonna use that. Okay, so Jesus dies, and the disciples run for their lives. Up until then, they had a thought that with Jesus, they were going to reign. They were going to be the presidents and the prime ministers and they were going to be in charge of stuff, okay? With Jesus' death, all of that disappeared. They were completely shattered. They were completely shattered, and they were only then given power at Pentecost when they humbled themselves and they threw themselves upon the good graces of God. Their personal power was gone. It had been shattered and replaced by a dependency upon Jesus Christ. So, going back to our verse here, the end time will come when the power of the holy people, and when the people say, "Oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can accomplish all these great things." It's only when God's people says, "You know what? I can't do anything. I can only do as God wills me to do." So there is a place, and I don't know if you can read this anymore, but there is a place in which the holy people have come to a realization that they never take this out. They never take that out. Because remember, it's completely shattered. The power is completely shattered. They never go this direction. They only go this direction. Only go that direction. There comes a time and place where they have been refined to the place